There was once a little girl called Ellie Rose who lived in a little cottage in the country. She was very kind-hearted, but none of that mattered because she was something else too. Something that made birds flap, spiders scuttle and cats cry. Ellie was loud, and I mean it. She spoke loud, she ate loud, she even thought loud. And there couldn't be two children quite so different than Ellie and her brother Nathaniel. Nathaniel was as quiet as a mouse. He was as quiet as she was noisy, and he just couldn't deal with it. Noise made Nathaniel's toes curl, and his nose flare, and his heart beat against his chest like a mountain gorilla. When Ellie was about, Nathaniel tried to be as far away as possible. But Ellie loved her brother so, and it made her very sad that Nathaniel didn't want to spend time with her. All she wanted to do, after all, was to make him happy. So on Monday, Ellie decided to make his favourite cereal and pour his favourite juice. She bounded down the stairs excitedly, causing several cracks to appear on the ceiling. Mum cringed and shook her head. "Really, Ellie?" she said. Nathaniel shrank into his chair and tried to disappear. "Morning, Nathaniel," she bellowed as she skipped by. Nathaniel dropped his juice onto the table. The whole juice went out the glass and onto his school pants. I'm afraid to say it landed in the place drinks land when they want you to look like you've wet your pants. But as they were already running late, it was too late to change. So Nathaniel was teased a lot at school that day, I'm afraid. On Tuesday, to say sorry, Ellie built Nathaniel a house on their iPad game. She made him his own island and a farm and all the things he loved most. She even made a radio which played fabulous tunes, loud ones. Nathaniel was kicking a ball when she snuck up behind him and switched on the radio. Nathaniel was so startled he kicked himself in his own head. His football went soaring across the garden and knocked over Mum's potted plants. Nathaniel wasn't happy. Mum even less so. Oh dear, oh dear. On Wednesday, Ellie made Nathaniel's bed, just the way he liked it, tucked up tight like a sausage roll. Nathaniel didn't have many teddies, so she left her wind-up robot as a companion for him. She was so eager to see his joy, she hid behind his curtains to watch. But when a sleepy Nathaniel pulled back the bed sheets, he set off the robot's switches, and before he knew what was happening, the toy shot loads of plastic balls at his forehead. Ellie ran to comfort him, but in her haste, she stood on the curtains and brought the whole curtain rail down with a big massive kaboom. Nathaniel was so shaken up, I'm afraid to say he had to spend the whole night with his mummy and daddy, and they weren't too pleased about that, I can tell you, because Nathaniel was a very turny, twisty type of sleeper, and had once given Daddy a black eye. Ellie was beginning to lose hope. No matter how hard she tried, something always went wrong. On Thursday, Ellie bought Nathaniel a pet. He'd been doing a topic at school about reptiles, and Ellie had never seen Nathaniel so excited about anything. Ellie knew one fact about reptiles, that they were cold-blooded and needed to keep warm. Her favourite type of reptile was a dragon. There were always dragons in good fairy stories, so she chose a bearded one and plopped her into Nathaniel's warm bath water while Daddy fetched the towels. Nathaniel was filthy from digging in the garden and jumped in quickly to wash himself. But what happened next he could never have imagined. You see, the mini dinosaur jumped out from beneath the bubbles and suds, ran up his arm and sat on the top of his head like a weird general's hat. Nathaniel fainted, and Daddy had to scoop him out. The dragon snuck away unseen. Daddy didn't even see it, didn't know it was there. When Nathaniel woke, he told Dad what had happened. Dad said he was watching too many lizard programs. Nathaniel knew it had something to do with his ogre of a sister. By Friday, Ellie was exhausted. Perhaps she was a terrible person. But she pulled herself together and decided to have one last go. This one had to be good. where Nathaniel could finally realise what a wonderful sister she was. Nathaniel loved nature walks, particularly bird watching, and had always wanted to spot a greater spotted nincompoop. He had fancy binoculars, a notepad and a little pencil tucked behind his ear. He even knew a special number to dial if he was ever lucky enough to spot it. Unfortunately, no one ever did. But Ellie was about to change all that. She was brilliant at arts and crafts and made the most marvellous spotted nincompoop you ever saw and placed it on the bird table on the lawn. Nathaniel looked out across the lawn that day and, oh my God, what was that? Dad, you won't believe it, it's a nincompoop. But Dad was on an important call and not really paying attention.
Hello?
Don't call your mother names, he said absent-mindedly. So Nathaniel dialed the special number. Within 5 minutes, a horde of anoraked men in Wellington boots arrived at their house, all marvelling at the discovery. The TV news came and the RSPCA, who look after little animals, stopped the crowds from getting too close. Everyone was amazed, and I don't think he's ever had a prouder day up until that point anyway. Ellie too, until the nincompoop's beak fell off, and followed by its head. The crowd gasped in disbelief. Nathaniel said right there and then, I'm never speaking to my sister again, ever. This time she's gone too far. Ellie cried all through the night. She was so tired she didn't get up at all on Saturday, nor Sunday, and her parents were starting to get worried. Even Nathaniel couldn't cope with the quietness in the house. It was so creepy. He couldn't hear her chewing or snoring or laughing or thinking, and the quiet was just too loud. He came to sit in Ellie's room. How could this tiny, sweet little girl cause such a racket? He saw the bearded dragon on her shelf, and the reptile books, and his box of favourite cereal, and the bird watching book, and he realised then how hard his little sister had been trying to make him happy, and suddenly he felt very ashamed of himself. He whispered, if you wake up, Ellie, I promise I will never, well, hardly ever, moan at you again. Now Ellie had heard the whole thing. She had just been pretending to be asleep. She quickly gave him a big hug. And Nathaniel was so surprised. He nearly jumped out of his skin, obviously. Here, she said, giving him a remote control. What's this for? From now on, if I get too loud, turn my volume down or even turn me off. She laughed. A loud, roaring laugh that made a woodlouse shriek. Nathaniel laughed too, but his heart was starting to beat really fast again, the way it gets, his nose flaring and everything, the way he gets when he's anxious. So straight away, he lifted up the remote control, pointed her at his sister, and poof!